I smoothed down my simple gray blouse and adjusted my turquoise necklace, a piece my grandmother had made for me years ago. It was the kind of outfit I'd always thought appropriate for family dinners, not too fancy to make Linda uncomfortable, but respectful enough to show I cared. At 74, I'd long since stopped worrying about trends, but I'd always believed in presenting myself with dignity. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. It really encourages me to keep sharing these incredible stories with you all. Kindly let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing where my sweethearts are tuning in. Are you watching from your kitchen like me? Your bedroom? Your office during lunch break? Tell me, sweetheart. David said dinner would start at 7. I still had an hour left. I looked around my living room where every single thing told a story. A picture with Robert at our golden wedding. Little David with his fishing rod and the first fish he caught. Tyler and Emma at graduation. These pictures are silent witnesses to a time when everything seemed simpler. My gaze lingered on Robert's picture. What would he do now? 15 years have passed since he was gone, and I still mentally consult him. "Mary, don't let yourself get hurt," he would say. Robert always knew how to set boundaries, even with his own son. I, on the other hand, didn't. The phone vibrated on the table. A message from David. Smiling, I reached for my glasses, waiting for clarification about tonight. Perhaps he was asking if I needed help getting to their new home, though he'd rarely offered such help in recent years. "Mom, I'm sorry, but we can't make it tonight. Linda is hosting a dinner for her coworkers. We'll reschedule for another day." I reread the message. Something didn't add up. David had called yesterday, insisting I be there, talking about some special announcement. I looked at the message again when my phone vibrated with a new notification. "You weren't invited to dinner. My wife doesn't want you there." My hand trembled, my heart clenched as if someone had wrapped icy fingers around it. It couldn't be from David, not from my son. But it was his name, his number. I sank slowly into the chair, still clutching the phone as if letting it out of my hands would lose the last link to reality. Memories flashed before my eyes. Little David clinging to my skirt on the first day of kindergarten. Teenage David embarrassedly asking for girl advice. Adult David introducing Linda to me, beaming with happiness. And now this message. Cold, detached, alienating. Can you imagine receiving a text like this from your own child? How would you feel at that moment? Drop a comment below and let me know. Have you ever been blindsided by family like this? Was it a sudden decision, or just the first time they decided to be honest? How many times had they discussed me behind closed doors? How many smiles were fake? How many invitations were forced? My gaze fell on a brochure lying on the table, a glossy advertisement for the River Ridge Estates apartment complex. Their new home, a 3-story townhouse overlooking the river with a private dock. The house for which I'd made a down payment of $135,000 6 months ago. "Mom, it's an investment in the future," David had said then. "A place for family gatherings. Your corner will be there too." My corner, I grinned bitterly. Apparently that corner had just disappeared. I remembered the day David and I had been at the bank. The manager had looked at me with poorly concealed surprise as I signed the paperwork. "Are you sure, Mrs. Blackfeather? It's a substantial sum." I was sure. Robert had left me enough so I could help our son. It was the right thing to do. There were other investments after that. A new car for David. Safer for traveling with the kids. A private tutoring program for Tyler. The boy has special learning needs. The kitchen remodel Linda had longed for. She works so hard, she deserves comfort. Each time I pulled out my checkbook, and each time it felt like the right thing to do. And what did I get in return? Rare phone calls, formal visits on holidays, and now this text. Think about your own family relationships. Have you ever felt like you were giving more than you were receiving? Let me know in the comments what you think Mary should do next. I rose slowly and walked over to the secretary I'd gotten from my mother. The top right-hand drawer where I kept all my financial documents. Neatly arranged folders with receipts, bank statements, checks. The folder labeled David was the thickest. I opened it and started going through the documents. Here was a check for $20,000 alone to start a business that David had abandoned after 6 months. a receipt for continuing education courses for Linda, a bill for roof repairs on their previous home, Tyler's car insurance. How many things had I paid for over the years? How many times have I helped, supported, rescued, and for what? To be barred from the doorstep of a house I'd paid for. The phone vibrated again. I flinched, but it was a message from someone else. Emma, my granddaughter. Grandma, are you coming over today? I missed you. My hand hovered over the keyboard. Emma had always been different, sincere, caring. Even when her parents and brother had forgotten I existed, she made time to stop by, to call, to ask how I was doing. I typed slowly, "Honey, it looks like your parents have decided it's best for me to stay home." I sent it. A few seconds later came the reply. "What? Why? Daddy said yesterday that you absolutely had to be there." So Emma didn't know. I imagined her now, standing somewhere in that new house, perplexed. The house I'd paid for. My gaze fell back to the file folder. All these years I thought I was buying my family's love and respect, but as it turned out, I was only renting their time and attention. And the lease seemed to have expired. Have you ever felt like you were buying love instead of receiving it freely? What would you do if you discovered how much money you'd spent trying to keep family close? Share your thoughts below. I picked up my cell phone and dialed my bank's number. After a few beeps, a polite female voice answered. "Good evening, First National Bank of Oregon. How may I help you?" "Good evening. My name is Mary Blackfeather. I'd like to consult about some regular payments from my account." "Of course, Mrs. Blackfeather. I will need to ask a few questions to confirm your identity." As she listed her questions and I patiently answered, a plan formed in my mind. Clear, ruthless, fair. "Thank you for the confirmation, Mrs. Blackfeather. What exactly can I do for you?" "I'd like to cancel all automatic payments and transfers from all my accounts. Every single one." There was a brief pause. "All payments, Mrs. Blackfeather? You have quite a few." "Yes, all of them. And I also need to revoke the power of attorney I gave to my son, David Blackfeather." "I see." I could hear the slight confusion in her voice. "This is a major change, Mrs. Blackfeather. Perhaps you should come down to the bank branch for a more detailed consultation." "I'll come down tomorrow morning and sign the necessary documents," I interrupted. "But I need the process to start today. Is that possible?" Another pause. "Yes, we can temporarily suspend all payments until your visit, but we'll need your signature for a full reversal." "That's great. Suspend everything right now." While she typed something on her computer, I looked at Robert's picture. "You were right, honey," I thought. "You can't let people sit on your neck, even if they are your own children." "Ready, Mrs. Blackfeather. Temporary suspension activated. You have a total of," she paused, 162 regular payments and transfers, all of which are blocked until your visit to the branch." I had no idea there were so many. 162 ways I'd supported my son and his family. 162 payments. Can you believe that? Do you think Mary is making the right decision? Would you have the courage to cut off your family financially after being disrespected like this? Let me know what you would do. Thank you. I'll be there tomorrow when it opens. I hung up the phone and felt a strange sense of relief. It was as if the heavy backpack I'd been carrying for years had suddenly been lifted off my shoulders. The phone vibrated again. David. Emma must have said something to him. I didn't bother answering it. Instead, I wrote a short message. "Then pay your own way, freeloaders." My finger froze over the send button. Was I ready to turn the page? To destroy the fragile peace that I had supported for so long with my money and patience? But hadn't they been the first to destroy it by denying me even basic respect? Hadn't they decided I was no longer needed, not even in the house I'd paid for? I pressed send and then turned the phone off. In the quiet of my living room, I suddenly felt a strange calm. For the first time in years, I had done something not for my son or his family, but for me. And it was liberating. I walked over to the closet and pulled out an old photo album. As I flipped through the pages of my life, my wedding to Robert, David's birth, family vacations, I realized that somewhere along the way, I'd lost myself. Melted into the needs of others, forgetting my own desires and dignity. Robert always said, "Mary, don't let anyone take you for granted." Even on his deathbed, he made me promise to take care of myself as I took care of others. I haven't kept that promise until today. That text message, "Pay your own way, freeloaders." Do you think Mary went too far? Or was it exactly what they needed to hear? Have you ever had to set a hard boundary with your family? Tell me about it in the comments. The First National Bank of Oregon opened at 9 in the morning, but I got there 20 minutes before it opened. The night had been surprisingly peaceful, the first time I'd slept without sleeping pills in a long time. Determination gave me strength. When the bank opened, I was the first customer. The young woman behind the counter smiled welcomingly at me. "Good morning, can I help you?" "I need to see Mrs. Williams," I replied. Patricia Williams had worked at the bank for almost 30 years, and she was the person Robert and I always went to. A few minutes later, I was sitting in Patricia's office. She hadn't changed much over the years. The same neat gray hair, the same attentive eyes behind her thin-rimmed glasses. "Mary, it's good to see you." She shook my hand. "I was informed about the call yesterday. All 162 payments have been suspended as you requested. Is something wrong?" I looked her straight in the eye. "I want to cancel them all forever and cut off David's access to my accounts." Patricia took off her glasses and wiped them with a tissue, a gesture I'd noticed when she was thinking about something important. "Mary, we've known each other for years. Are you sure? It's a rather radical decision." "I'm absolutely sure." She nodded and started typing something on the computer. "That's good. I'll prepare all the necessary documents. It will take some time. You do have a lot of automatic payments." While the system was generating the documents, Patricia pulled out a thick folder. "Here are printouts of all your regular transactions for the last year. It might be helpful for you to look through them so you don't miss anything." I opened the folder. Pages and pages of statements. Each line is money going out of my pocket and into my family's pocket. Can you imagine seeing 162 different ways your family has been taking your money? What do you think Mary discovered when she looked through those bank statements? Keep watching to find out. The first receipt. The monthly mortgage payment for David and Linda's new house. $3,800. I remembered the day David had brought me to see this house. "Mom, this is the perfect place for our family and for you. There's a guest room with a private bath on the first floor. You won't have to climb the stairs." A guest room I've never slept in, which they won't let me in now. The next receipt. Insurance on Linda's car, a premium SUV that she said was necessary to work with high-level clients, $850 quarterly. I kept leafing through. Payment for a membership to the country club where Linda was making business connections. Bills for a private dental clinic because Tyler has a special bite and needs a specialist. Emma's college tuition, the only money I didn't regret. Each receipt brought back memories of the conversation, the request, sometimes even the tears. "Mom, we're so tight on funds right now." "Grandmother, this is the latest model. Without it, I'll be a white crow." "Mary, you don't want your grandson to suffer from complexes, do you?" Receipt after receipt. Page after page. A map of my naivety and their greed. "Here's the paperwork to cancel all payments." Patricia's voice brought me back to reality. "And the power of attorney revocation form. Please read it carefully and sign it if you agree." I took the pen and signed without hesitation. "Mary," Patricia lowered her voice, "if you need any help, any advice." "It's all right, Patricia." I smiled for the first time in a long time. "Everything is really okay." Think about all the times you've helped family members financially. Do you think they were grateful, or did they just expect it? How do you know when helping becomes enabling? Share your experiences below. Walking out of the bank, I felt lighter, like I had shed an invisible weight that had been dragging me down for years. My next stop was my lawyer's office. Francis Whitaker had been working with our family since Robert was alive. His graying beard had grown longer and his glasses thicker, but the wise gleam in his eyes remained the same. "Mrs. Blackfeather, what a pleasant surprise." He pointed to a chair. "What can I do for you?" "I want to change my will," I said calmly and confidently, "and set up a lifetime trust to protect my assets." Francis raised an eyebrow. "May I ask what prompted this decision?" "Family circumstances have changed. I didn't want to go into details. I need to know how I can legally and safely manage my finances without interference from my son or his family." He nodded without asking any more questions. "There are several options. Let's discuss each of them. We spent the next hour talking about irrevocable trusts, financial power of attorney, and contingent provisions in a will. Francis took notes and explained the legal intricacies. I felt strangely free making these decisions. When we finished, my phone had 15 missed calls from David, 7 from Linda, and 3 from Tyler. None from Emma. Should I have the paperwork ready by the end of the week? Francis asked as he walked me to the door. The sooner the better, I replied. And Francis, thank you. He nodded understandingly. You know, Mary, Robert always said you were stronger than you looked. I'm glad to see he was right. 15 missed calls from David. The panic is setting in. Do you think Mary should answer those calls or let them sweat it out? What would you do if your family was blowing up your phone after you cut off their money? Let me know. I walked out of the office with a slight smile. Robert, he always saw right through me. On the way home, I stopped at the supermarket. For the first time in a long time, I bought groceries just for myself, not thinking about David's preferences or Tyler's favorite snacks. It was a strange but pleasant feeling to think only of my own desires. There was a surprise waiting for me at home. Emma was sitting on the porch with her arms wrapped around her knees. She jumped up when she saw my car. Grandma, she rushed over to me, helping me with the bags. I've been calling all day. Why didn't you answer? I looked at my granddaughter carefully. Emma looks so much like me when I was young, the same brown hair, the same stubborn wrinkles between her eyebrows when she worried. I've had a busy day, dear. I opened the door. Come in and tell me what happened. We went into the kitchen. Emma sat at the table, tapping her fingers nervously on the countertop while I sorted through the groceries. Grandma, what's going on? Dad's in a panic. He says you've blocked all payments and won't answer your phone. I calmly took out the kettle. It's true, I've decided to cut off your family's financial support. But why? I could hear the genuine bewilderment in her voice. Did something happen? I poured water into the kettle and put it on the stove before answering. Your father canceled my invitation to the family dinner last night, said your mother didn't want me there. Emma turned pale. What? No way. Dad's been saying all week how important it was that you come. I have the message. I pulled out my phone and showed her. Emma covered her mouth with her hand as she read. Oh my God, I didn't know, I swear. Her eyes filled with tears. It's awful, Grandma. I don't understand how he could. I put a cup of tea in front of her. That was the last straw, Emma. For years I've paid for everything, from your house to Tyler's tennis lessons, and all that time I felt like I was being used. Yesterday I got confirmation. Emma was silent, staring into her cup. Then she looked up at me. You know, I've always seen it. How they, take advantage of your kindness, especially Mom. I tried to talk to Dad, but he always defended her. Emma is the only one who really sees what's happening. Do you have someone in your family who truly understands you, even when others don't? How important is it to have at least one person on your side? Share your thought, I nodded. Deep down, I always knew Emma understood more than she showed. What's going to happen now? She asked quietly. I mean, they have a lot of payments to make, loans. They'll have to manage on their own, I shrugged. They're adults with good jobs. David's a building inspector, your mother's a successful realtor. They'll be fine. The phone on the desk rang again. David. I muted it. Aren't you going to answer it? Emma asked. Not today. I shook my head. I needed time to collect my thoughts, and he needed time to realize the consequences of what he'd said. Emma looked at me thoughtfully. You know, Grandma, I've never seen you so determined. I smiled weakly. I hadn't seen myself like that for a long time either. We finished our tea in cozy silence. When Emma was about to leave, she hugged me tighter than usual. Are you okay? Sure you don't want me to stay? I'm perfectly fine, dear. I stroked her cheek. Go on and don't worry about me. She nodded but stopped at the door. I'm not taking sides in this conflict, Grandma. You understand that, don't you? Of course I do. I smiled. This is between me and your parents. It has nothing to do with you. Emma's trying not to take sides. Do you think that's fair, or should she stand up for her grandmother? How do you handle family conflicts when you're caught in the middle? Tell me in the comments. After Emma left, the house fell silent again. I checked the mail. There was a notice of a failed charge on Tyler's credit card. That's fast. Apparently my grandson was living up to his credit limit. I set the letter aside and sat in the chair by the window. My phone kept vibrating with incoming messages and calls, but I paid no attention to it. Instead, I pulled out an old photo album and opened it to a random page. A picture from 20 years ago. Me and Robert, young David and Linda, and little Tyler and Emma on a picnic. Everyone is smiling. When did things change? When did support become an obligation? When did love change to an expectation of financial assistance? I closed the album and walked over to the hallway mirror. The woman looking back at me looked tired, but there was something new in her eyes, a determination I hadn't seen in years. "Time to remember who you are, Mary Blackfeather," I said to my reflection. The ringing of the doorbell interrupted my thoughts. My heart jumped. Is it David? I went to the door and peered through the peephole. Lorene Campbell, an old friend of mine, stood on the doorstep with a basket in her hands. "Mary," she hugged me as soon as I opened the door. "I called, but you didn't answer. I thought I'd drop by, make sure you were okay." "Come in, Lorene." I let her in. "I'm sorry. I turned my phone off. Just a little family emergency." Lorene set the basket on the table, homemade cookies and a jar of jam. "Family problems?" She looked at me carefully. "Linda again?" Lorene had never hidden her opinion of my daughter-in-law. Predator, she called her. David this time. I briefly recounted yesterday's message and my decision. Lorene listened without interrupting. When I finished, she took my hand. "At last," she exclaimed, so relieved that I couldn't help smiling. "I'm sorry, Mary, but I've watched them take advantage of you for years. How many times I wanted to say enough, but it was none of my business." "I know," I sighed. "You were right all along. I just didn't want to see." Sometimes it takes an outside perspective to see the truth. Do you have a friend like Lorene who tells you the hard truths? How important is it to listen to people who aren't afraid to be honest with you? Let me know. "So what now?" Lorene asked, pouring us tea. "David must be panicking by now." "Let him panic," I shrugged. "I need time to sort out my feelings and then to realize what they'd lost." We talked with Lorene through the evening. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a mother or a grandmother, but just a woman talking to a friend. It was liberating. By the time Lorene left, it was getting dark. I decided to finally check my phone. 37 missed calls. 23 messages. I started going through them, wrinkling my nose at the tone that was becoming more and more desperate and demanding. "Mom, what's going on? Why isn't the mortgage payment going through?" "Mary, it's Linda. We need to talk. It's urgent." "Grandma, my card's been blocked. I'm stuck in town with no money." The last text from David came just 10 minutes ago. "Mom, I'm on my way to see you. We need to talk." I felt my muscles tense up. Was I ready for this conversation? But there didn't seem to be a choice. I turned off the light in the living room and walked to the kitchen. Put the kettle on. I took out my best cup, the one I only drank from on special occasions. Today was a special occasion. The day Mary Blackfeather finally said no. I heard the sound of a car pulling up and looked out the window. David, alone, without Linda. That was unusual. She usually had control of all the important conversations. The doorbell rang like the signal for the fight to begin. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and went to open the door. The confrontation is about to begin. David's at the door, and Mary's ready for the fight of her life. What do you think he's going to say? Will he apologize or try to guilt her into changing her mind? Drop your predictions in the comments. Let's see who gets it right. And if this story is hitting close to home for you, make sure you're subscribed to Granny Dorothy because this is just the beginning. The next part is going to blow your mind. David stood on the doorstep, unaccustomed to being disheveled. His usually neat shirt was wrinkled, and his eyes were a mixture of irritation and panic. I silently stepped aside to let him in. "Mom, what's going on?" He didn't waste time with greetings. "All the payments have been rejected. The bank says you've revoked all the authorizations. We can't pay the mortgage." I went into the kitchen where the kettle was already boiling. "Do you want tea?" I asked calmly, taking out a second cup. "What tea?" David shook his hands in despair. "Do you realize what's going on? The bank called about the late payment. Linda is hysterical." I poured boiling water into the teapot and turned to my son. "I understand. I have canceled all financial obligations to your family. All 162 payments. I have no intention of resuming them. David froze as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. What? Why? He slumped back in his chair, keeping his eyes on me. Is this some kind of joke? You weren't invited to dinner. My wife doesn't want you there. I quoted his message, watching his expression change. Rumat, that was a message from you, David. Not a joke. And my response wasn't a joke either. He went pale and lowered his head. This? It's not what you think, he started, but I interrupted him. What am I supposed to think? That my own son kicked me out of the door of the house I paid for? That my daughter-in-law doesn't want me at their table even though I fund their lifestyle? I put a cup of tea in front of him, but he didn't even look at it. Mom, it was stupid. I admit it, I shouldn't have written it. Linda was upset and you decided to make her happy by insulting your mother, I finished for him. That's very sweet, David. Can you believe David's trying to make excuses? Linda was upset? Like that's a reason to hurt his own mother. Have you ever had someone try to justify their bad behavior by blaming someone else? What do you think Mary should say next? Mom, please, he said, a pleading tone in his voice. We can't do this without your help. We have a mortgage, loans, Tyler has to pay for college. I took a sip of my tea, feeling the anger inside that I hadn't let come out in years. Didn't you think about that when you denied me even basic respect? When Linda criticized my clothes? When Tyler missed my birthdays? When you didn't call me on the anniversary of your father's death? David looked ashamed, but I saw a flicker of irritation in his eyes. He was always a bad actor. Mom, we appreciate everything you do for us. We do. It's just that sometimes, he hesitated, searching for words, sometimes there are misunderstandings. We all love you, even Linda, even though she doesn't always show it. I looked at my son, a grown man, a father of two, who now looked like a little boy caught stealing cookies. David, I don't believe you, I said quietly. I don't believe you love me. You love my money, my help, my willingness to solve your problems, but you don't love me. That's not true, he jumped up from his chair. How can you say that? Because it's true. I remained seated, keeping my composure. When was the last time you asked me how I was feeling? Inquired about my life? Invited me over for no reason? Not when you needed money or help with the kids? David opened his mouth but couldn't find anything to say. I continued. Your father always said you can't buy love. I didn't listen. I thought if I was generous enough, helpful enough, you'd appreciate me. I was wrong. Robert was so wise. You can't buy love. How many of us have tried to buy love or approval with money, gifts, or favors? Have you ever realized you were doing this? Share your story below. Mom, David took a step toward me. I understand you're upset. Why don't you let Linda and me come over this weekend? Talk things over calmly? No, I shook my head. I don't need to. My decision is final. But how are we going to pay for the house? I could hear the panic in his voice. The cars? Tyler's tuition? You have a good job, David. So does Linda. You're adults. You can handle it. He clenched his fists, and I saw the irritation on his face change to anger. You can't do this to us. His voice rose. After everything I what? I stood up too. What have you done for me, David? Name one thing you've done for me unselfishly, expecting nothing in return. He was silent again, and I could see him frantically going over the events of the last few years, trying to find an example. His silence was more eloquent than any words. You see? I sighed. You can't even think of one example. It's not fair. He took a step back. You're embarrassing me. Embarrassing? I grinned. What kind of embarrassment did you put me in by turning me away from a house and family dinner? David ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I remembered from his teenage years when he was nervous. It was a mistake, Mom. I've already apologized. What do you want me to do? Get on my knees. I want you to leave, I replied. I need time to think things over. When I'm ready to talk, I'll let you know. But Mom. Go away, David. My voice was quiet but firm. Please. Mary just told her own son to leave. Do you think she's being too harsh, or is this exactly what needed to happen? Sometimes tough love is the only love that works. What do you think? Tell me in the comments. He stared at me for a few seconds, as if he couldn't believe I was actually kicking him out the door. Then he silently turned and walked out of the kitchen. I heard the front door slam and then the roar of his car's engine pulling away from the house. Only when the sound died down completely did I let myself sit up and exhale. My hands were shaking. Confronting my son was harder than I'd expected. Part of me, the old, familiar part of me, wanted to run after him, to tell him I'd give it all back, just so he wouldn't be angry. But I didn't. Instead, I finished the cooled tea and started washing the dishes. I needed to keep my hands busy to calm my mind. The phone rang. Linda. I rejected the call. A minute later, a message came through. Mary, we need to talk. David told me about your conversation. I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Let's talk things out like adults. I grinned. Like adults. Linda always loved that phrase, especially when she wanted to show her superiority. I didn't respond. The next morning began with a visit from Francis Whitaker, my attorney. He brought the papers to sign, a new will and trust deed. It's ready, Mary. He laid the papers out on the table. As we discussed, the bulk of the estate goes into an irrevocable trust with you as the sole beneficiary during your lifetime. Upon your death, the assets are distributed according to your instructions. 40% to Emma, 10% to a library support charity, and the rest to your discretion. I went through the documents carefully. David and Tyler received the minimum shares required by law. Linda received nothing. That's right. I nodded and signed each sheet. Francis watched me with a slight smile. You know, Mary, in 30 years of practice, I've rarely seen such drastic changes in wills. Usually people hesitate, doubt. I've hesitated enough already, Francis. I signed the last one. He nodded and gathered the papers. I'll file them today. I'll send you copies within the week. And Mary, he paused, if you need legal help with any possible conflicts with the family, I'm always at your service. A new will that cuts out David and Linda. Do you think Mary's going too far, or is she finally protecting herself? How would you handle dividing your assets if your family had treated you this way? Let me know your thoughts. After Francis left, I decided to take a walk. It was a clear day, and the fresh air helped clear my mind. I headed toward the park where Robert and I often went on weekends. Taking a seat on a bench, I watched the children and their parents playing. A young woman with a little boy caught my eye. She was patiently helping him build a sandcastle, laughing with him as the structure collapsed. I remember doing the same thing with David years ago. Where and when had we lost that simple joy of being with each other? My thoughts were interrupted by the phone ringing. Tyler's number. I hesitated, but decided to answer it. Grandma? His voice sounded tense. Is it true? Did you cancel all the payments? Hello, Tyler. I tried to speak calmly. Yes, it's true. But why? He sounded genuinely puzzled. What happened? Your father didn't explain? He said something about a misunderstanding, about you being offended by some message, Tyler said quickly. Grandma, my credit card's been blocked. I can't pay the rent. I sighed. Tyler was always straightforward, straight to the heart of the problem, how it affected him personally. Tyler, you're 23 years old. You work for an insurance company. Why are you still dependent on my money? Yeah. He hesitated. You've always been there for me. I'm used to. Exactly, I interrupted him. You're all used to it. You took my help for granted, never wondered how I felt when your father wrote to tell me I was unwelcome in the house I was paying for. There was silence on the other end of the line. Did Dad really write that? Tyler finally asked, and I could hear a note of disbelief in his voice. Yes, he did. I didn't soften the blow. And that was the last straw, Tyler. Continue edit. For years I supported your family, paid for your house, your cars, your education, even your tennis club. And what did I get in return? Disrespect, neglect, and formal visits on holidays. Grandma, he stammered again. I didn't know you felt that way. Because none of you ever asked, I said without anger, simply stating a fact. You took and took without thinking about how I felt. Silence again. Then a quiet question. So what now? Now you have to deal with it on your own, I said calmly, like all adults do. But Grandma, I have to. Go, Tyler, I interrupted him. Think about what I said and how you've all treated me over the years. I ended the call and just sat for a while, watching the park. Talking to Tyler had left a strange feeling, a mixture of sadness and relief. Sadness at realizing how shallow our relationship had been. Relief that I'd finally told the truth. Tyler's 23 and can't pay his own rent without Grandma's help. Do you think Mary's being too tough on him, or is it time he learned to be independent? At what age should young adults be financially responsible for themselves? Share your thoughts. I spent the evening reading a book I'd been putting off for a while. Before I went to bed, I checked my phone. A few more missed calls from David and Linda. A message from Emma. Grandma, our house is in chaos. My parents are fighting. Tyler is in a panic about money. Are you okay? Can I come over tomorrow? I replied, yes, dear, I'd love to see you. I'm perfectly fine. The morning brought an unexpected surprise. Linda was standing on the doorstep, impeccably dressed with perfect styling and a strange smile. In her hands was a box of cakes from an expensive pastry shop. Mary, good morning. She handed me the box. May I come in? We need to talk. I let her in silently, wondering what strategy she'd chosen. Linda walked into the living room, giving me the usual appraising look that always made my hands go cold. Mary? She sat on the edge of the couch, her hands folded in her lap. I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Really? I sat down across from her without offering her tea or coffee. David shouldn't have sent that message. She shook her head with a look of genuine regret on her face. It was an emotional reaction. We were stressed about work, planning dinner. Linda, I interrupted her. Let's not waste time. You're not here to apologize. You're here for the money. Her smile faltered for a moment but quickly returned. Mary, it's not fair. I'm truly sorry for what happened. We all appreciate your help and support. You are an important part of our family. So important that you didn't want me at your table, I asked calmly, without anger. Linda sighed as if explaining something to an uncomprehending child. That night was special. We had important guests, potential clients. I wanted everything to go perfectly. You know how important this is to my career. And I would ruin it? I raised an eyebrow. With what exactly? With my old-fashioned clothes? Inappropriate comments? That's not what I meant, she pursed her lips. Mary, let's be honest, you and I have always had a complicated relationship, but that's no reason to destroy the whole family. David's desperate. Tyler can't pay his bills. We're in danger of losing the house. The house I paid for, I reminded her. Which you helped pay for, she corrected me. We put up a lot of money too. Linda's trying to rewrite history. We put up a lot of money too, when Mary paid the down payment. Have you ever dealt with someone who tried to minimize your contributions while maximizing their own? How did you handle it? I looked at this woman, beautiful, confident, used to getting what she wanted. She had been part of my family for 25 years, but I'd never felt a real connection to her. Linda, I leaned forward. I will no longer finance your life. Not the house, not the cars, not Tyler's education, nothing. This is my final decision. Her face changed. The mask of friendliness fell away, revealing the cold calculation I'd always sensed beneath her smiles. You can't do this to us. Her voice hardened. After all we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me, Linda? I asked with genuine curiosity. We, she stammered, clearly unprepared for such a question. We included you in our family, allowed you to be a part of your grandchildren's lives, took care of you. Taken care of. I couldn't hold back a bitter laugh. When was the last time you asked me how I was feeling? When you called just to talk, not to ask for money? Linda stood up, her face pale with anger. You're going to regret this, Mary. We're the only family you have. Who will take care of you when you are too old to live on your own? I'll take care of myself. I stood up too, just like I did all my life before I started spending all my energy and money on your family. She headed for the door but stopped on the threshold. This isn't over, Mary. David won't leave it alone. You're his mother. He has rights. Rights to what, Linda? My money? I shook my head. Go away and don't come back until you learn some basic respect. Linda's true colors are finally showing. He has rights to Mary's money? Do you think adult children have a right to their parents' financial support? What do you think about Linda's threat? Let me know in the comments. After Linda left, I felt strangely empty. It was as if the final scene of a long play had been played. The curtain had fallen and the actors had dispersed. I went to the window. The day was clear, sunny. Life went on. Neighbors worked in the garden, children rode their bikes, the letter carrier delivered letters. My gaze fell on the kitchen table where a stack of unpaid bills lay. Before, I would have tackled them immediately, for fear of missing the deadline and letting my family down. Now I could pay them whenever I wanted. I could go to the store and buy myself a new dress without worrying if I had enough money to pay for Tyler's tennis club. I could take that art class I'd been wanting to take for ages. For the first time in years, I was truly free. Free from obligation, free from guilt, free from the constant need to sacrifice my own desires for the sake of others. I picked up my cell phone and dialed Lorene's number. "Remember you were talking about going to the mountains next month?" I asked when she answered. "I'd like to join you if the invitation still stands." "Mary?" I could hear the joyful surprise in her voice. "Of course, we'd be delighted, but I thought you wouldn't be able to because of—" "I can now," I smiled. "I no longer have any obligations holding me back." After talking to Lorene, I pulled out an old notebook and started making a list. A list of things to do, places to go, things that I dreamed of doing but always put off for later because there were more important things. David's needs, Linda's wants, Tyler's whims. Now it was my time, Mary Blackfeather's time, and I was going to make the most of it. The phone rang again. "David." I firmly rejected the call. I had more important things to do today. "Mary's making a list of dreams." After years of putting everyone else first, she's finally putting herself first. "What would be on your list if you suddenly had complete freedom? What dreams have you been putting off? Share them below." It had been a surprisingly quiet 2 weeks. I'd expected David and Linda to try to change my mind, but after my daughter-in-law's visit, there was a strange silence. They never called again, never came by unannounced. Only Emma stopped by a couple times, but she and I had tacitly agreed not to discuss the family drama. Tuesday morning greeted me with bright sunshine. I sipped my coffee leisurely on the veranda, browsing through the catalog of a travel company. A trip to the mountains with Lorene was scheduled for next month, but why not plan something else? I'd only seen Europe in pictures and movies. Robert had always dreamed of showing me Italy, the home of his ancestors. We'd been saving that trip for retirement, but when it came, his health no longer allowed for traveling. I flipped through pages of photos of Rome, Florence, Venice, imagining myself there with a camera, in comfortable shoes, without having to rush home to help with the grandchildren or solve David's next financial problem. The doorbell interrupted my reverie. Lorene stood on the doorstep with a large wicker basket. "Good morning, traveler," she smiled as she entered the house. I brought croissants from the new French bakery and fresh gossip. I laughed as I led her into the house. What better way to spend a Tuesday? We settled on the veranda. Lorene poured the coffee she'd brought in a thermos and pulled out the croissants that were still warm. "So," she took a bite of the pastry, "how's your new free life going?" "Unaccustomed," I admitted. Sometimes I wake up feeling like I've forgotten something important, and then I remember that the only person I have to take care of is myself. Lorene nodded understandingly. "That's normal. You've been living someone else's needs for too long. Your body isn't used to the lack of stress yet." She was quiet for a moment, then added in a more serious tone. "I saw Linda at the supermarket yesterday. She was buying canned goods and pasta. No delicacies that she was so used to." I raised an eyebrow. "Really? What did she look like?" "Not as flawless as usual," Lorene shrugged. "Her hair was a little disheveled, her clothes plainer. She didn't notice me, and I didn't say hello." I tried to imagine Linda without her usual gloss. A difficult task. My daughter-in-law always looked like she just stepped off the cover of a fashion magazine. "I guess they do have to tighten their belts," I said thoughtfully. "And rightfully so," Lorene exclaimed with sudden passion. "Mary, I've watched them take advantage of you for years, especially Linda. That woman has never appreciated your generosity or your patience. Even Linda's having to shop for bargain groceries now. Do you feel sorry for them, or do you think they're finally learning what the real world is like? Should Mary feel guilty about their struggles? What do you think?" I sighed. "I know, it's strange to think that they might be struggling financially. David's never been good at saving money." "It's time he learned," Lorene cut him off. "At his age, he should be standing on his own 2 feet, not clinging to his mother's skirt." I couldn't help but smile at my friend's bluntness. Lorene always said what she thought without trying to soften the blow. I guess that's why we'd been friends for so many years. She was a breath of fresh air in the midst of all the falseness. Speaking of new life, Lorene nodded at the catalog on the table. What are you studying? I'm thinking about going to Italy. I slid the catalog over to her. Robert always wanted to show me Rome. Lorene glowed. That's a great idea. When are you thinking of going? Maybe in the fall, I shrugged. I still have to plan and prepare. Why not sooner? Lorene flipped through the pages of the catalog. June is the perfect time for Italy. It's not too hot yet, but it's warm enough for walking. I wondered what was holding me back. Before, there had always been reasons to postpone, to help with the kids, to be on call in case of another David crisis, to avoid spending money on myself when the family might need help. Now those reasons were gone. You know, you're right, I smiled. Why not? I'll call the agency today. Lorene nodded contentedly. Now that's the right decision. And you know what? If you want some company, I could come with you. Italy has been on my wish list for a long time. We spent the rest of the morning discussing possible itineraries and sites we'd like to see. For the first time in a long time, I felt really excited, anticipating something new and exciting. When Lorene left, I immediately called the travel agency and booked a consultation for the next day. Then I pulled out an old atlas Robert had given me years ago and began studying a map of Italy, imagining myself in those exotic places. Mary's planning her dream trip to Italy. After years of sacrificing for others, she's finally doing something for herself. What's something you've always wanted to do but kept putting off for others? It's never too late to start living for yourself. Tell me about your dreams. The doorbell rang, interrupting my reverie. I opened it and saw Tyler, disheveled in a crumpled shirt with dark circles under his eyes. Grandma, he shifted awkwardly from foot to foot. May I come in? I stepped aside silently, letting him pass. Tyler walked into the living room and sat on the couch, rubbing his hands together nervously. Would you like some tea? I asked. No thanks, he shook his head. Grandma, I need help. I sat down across from him, keeping a calm expression on my face. What kind of help, Tyler? He took a deep breath as if about to dive into cold water. Money, Grandma. I need money. My card's been blocked. The bank's demanding payment. I can't pay my rent, my car. His voice was shaking. I'm totally screwed. Pardon the expression. I looked at my grandson, a grown man who now looked like a lost child. Tyler had always been spoiled, first by David and Linda, then by me. He'd never had to really fight for anything. How much do you owe the bank? I asked calmly. $7,000. He lowered his eyes. I got a little carried away with the credit cards the last few months. What did you spend that money on, Tyler? He shrugged, not looking at me. Various things. A new cell phone, a trip to the coast with some friends, a couple of parties. I was silent, waiting for him to continue. Tyler finally looked up. Grandma, I know I haven't been very attentive to you. I haven't called much, I haven't visited much, but I really love you, and I'm really asking you to help me now. I'll pay you back, I promise. I looked at him carefully, trying to see the sincerity behind those words. Tyler always had a way of being charming when he needed something, a trait he'd inherited from Linda. Tyler, I finally said. You're 23 years old. You've been working for an insurance company for almost 2 years now. Why haven't you learned how to handle your finances yet? He looked embarrassed. Yeah, I don't know. I never really thought about it. I could always ask my parents or you. Exactly, I nodded. There was always someone to solve your problems. But Tyler, you can't go on like this forever. Sooner or later, everyone has to learn to stand on their own 2 feet. I know, Grandma, he nodded enthusiastically. And I will learn, I promise. Just help me this last time. I'll get an extra job, save money. I shook my head. No, Tyler, I'm not giving you any money. His face stretched in surprise. He clearly hadn't expected a rejection. But Grandma, what am I supposed to do? What do adults do when they find themselves in a difficult situation? I answered. Look for a solution. Talk to the bank about restructuring your debt. Find an additional source of income. Cut back on expenses. Tyler looked at me as if I were speaking a foreign language. But it's so complicated. Life is complicated, I shrugged. Especially when you have to take responsibility for your actions. Tyler's learning that actions have consequences. Do you think Mary's being too harsh by refusing to bail him out again? Or is this exactly the lesson he needs? How do we help young adults without enabling them? Share your thoughts. He jumped up, and I could see the range of emotions on his face. Mistrust, resentment, anger. So you're just leaving me? After all these years of telling me you love me? I love you, Tyler. I remained calm. That's why I refuse to continue supporting your addiction to my money. That's not love. That's codependency. And it's hurting you more than it's helping you. You're just getting back at all of us because of some fight with Dad. He was almost shouting. I looked at my angry grandson and saw in him a reflection of Linda. The same violent reaction to rejection, the same inability to take no for an answer. Tyler, please sit down, I said quietly but firmly. To my surprise, he obeyed, flopping back onto the couch. I'm not taking revenge on anyone. I just stopped being an ATM for my family. Stopped buying the love and respect that should be unconditional. I paused, giving him time to consider my words. Think about this. When was the last time you came to me just for fun, without asking for money or help? When you took an interest in my life, in my feelings? Tyler was silent, avoiding my gaze. You can't remember, can you? I sighed. That's the problem, Tyler. Our relationship has long since become a transaction. I give money, you pretend to care about me. It's not a family, it's a business arrangement. That's not true. He shook his head, but without the same confidence. We care about you. We do. I raised an eyebrow. Name me one thing you've done for me unselfishly in the last year. Tyler hesitated, his forehead furrowed with tension. I could see him trying to remember anything. A call, a visit, a gift that didn't involve a request or an obligation. I came to your birthday party. He finally squeezed out. Yes, you did, I nodded. An hour later than everyone else, without a present, and left right after the cake, saying you were meeting some friends. He lowered his head. I didn't mean to. I didn't think. That's right, Tyler. You weren't thinking. Neither of you were thinking about my feelings. I softened my tone. I'm not mad at you. I really am. I'm just not going to participate in this unhealthy relationship anymore. We sat in silence. Tyler looked depressed, hunched over on the couch. I suddenly saw him as the little boy I'd taught to ride his bike, stubborn but vulnerable. Look, I leaned toward him. I won't give you money, but I can offer you something else. He looked up. What? My friend Francis Whitaker, a lawyer, is looking for a part-time assistant. Nothing complicated, sorting documents, answering phones. It won't solve all your problems, but it'll be an extra source of income. If you want, I can talk to him. Tyler looked surprised. Would you do that for me? After everything I've said? You're my grandson, Tyler. I love you no matter what. But my love will no longer be expressed in checks and credit cards. He was silent for a moment, considering my words. Then he nodded slowly. Okay. Yeah, I'll give it a try. Thank you, Grandma. Now this is real love. Mary's offering Tyler a hand up, not a handout. She's teaching him to fish instead of giving him a fish. Do you think this approach will work better than just giving him money? Have you ever had to show tough love to someone you care about? When Tyler left, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and satisfaction. Maybe this conversation was the first step toward building a new, healthier relationship with my grandson. Or maybe it was just another manipulation on his part. Time would tell. That same evening, Emma arrived. Unlike her brother, she looked collected and calm. I met Tyler on the way over, she said as she helped me make dinner. He was kind of quiet. We talked about money and responsibility. I chopped vegetables for the salad. I wasn't sure he took it well. Emma nodded, stirring the dressing. It's good for him to grow up a little. Tyler's always had it too easy. I glanced at my granddaughter. She and Tyler were the same age, but so different. Emma was always more independent, more mature. How are things at home? I asked cautiously. Emma sighed. Honestly, not great. My parents fight all the time. Mom blames Dad for not being able to convince you to return the financing. Dad says she's the one who ruined it with her snobbery. I'm sorry you have to be in the center of this conflict. I put my hand on her shoulder. It's okay, she smiled weakly. I'd known for a long time that their relationship wasn't very healthy. They were together mostly for status and comfort. When both of those things were threatened, she didn't finish her sentence, but I understood. David and Linda's marriage had always struck me as an odd union. my soft, compliant son, and his ambitious, overbearing wife. Now that the financial cushion was gone, all the cracks in their relationship had become obvious. "They're selling Mom's car," Emma continued, setting the table. "The SUV you gave her the money for last year, and they're looking to refinance the mortgage." I nodded without commenting. Part of me felt a prick of conscience. I didn't want my son to suffer. But the other part realized it was a necessary lesson. "You know, Grandma," Emma sat down at the table, "I want you to know that I support your decision." I looked at her in surprise. "You do?" "Yes," she nodded. "I've seen them use you for a long time, especially Mom. I tried to talk to Dad, but he always made excuses." I sat down next to her, unexpectedly touched by her words. "Thank you, Emma. It means a lot to me." "I just want you to be happy," she took my hand. "You've taken care of all of us for so many years. It's time to think about yourself." Emma gets it. She's the only one in the family who truly sees what's been happening and supports Mary's decision. How important is it to have at least one person who understands and supports you? Have you ever been the Emma in your family situation? We ate dinner talking about her work, my plans to go to Italy, and the books we'd recently read. Just a normal conversation between two people who are interested in each other. No asking, no manipulation, no tension. This is exactly what I think a family relationship should look like. When Emma was about to leave, she hugged me tighter than usual. "You know I'll always be there for you, right? No matter what happens between you and my parents." "I know, honey," I stroked her cheek. "And I'll always be there for you. Not because I have to, but because I want to." After Emma left, I sat in silence for a long time, thinking about the vicissitudes of family. How strange that of all my family, it was my granddaughter who was the most understanding, the most mature. Maybe that was the point, to pass on not only genes and property, but also values, principles, the ability to truly love and care. The phone rang, interrupting my musings. David's number. I hesitated, but decided to answer it. "Yes, David?" "Mom," his voice sounded strained, "we need to talk tomorrow. As a family." "About what?" I asked calmly. "About the situation we're in. About how we could fix it." I sighed. "David, I told you and Linda my decision is final." "Mom, please," he said, a pleading tone in his voice. "At least hear us out. We're ready to compromise." I hesitated. Part of me didn't want to continue this pointless circle of talk. But the other part, the wiser, calmer part, knew that a complete break with my son wouldn't make me happy. "Okay, David, 2 tomorrow afternoon. My place." "Thank you, Mom." The relief in his voice was almost palpable. "We'll be there, all of us." I hung up the phone and went to the window. The evening sky was colored in shades of pink and gold. I thought about tomorrow's meeting, another round of family negotiations. But this time it would be different. I had new rules. The family meeting is set. David says they're ready to compromise, but what kind of compromise could there be? Mary's already made her decision. What do you think they're planning? Drop your predictions in the comments. And if you're loving this story of family drama and personal empowerment, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Tomorrow we'll see what happens when the whole family comes together for what might be their final confrontation. You won't want to miss it. Until then, remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no. Sometimes setting boundaries is the only way to save yourself and teach others how to treat you with respect. I'll see you in the next video. This is Granny Dorothy, reminding you that it's never too late to start putting yourself first.